Minecraft 1.19 made all sorts of improvements to older features, giving them new uses and making them fit the world better. This is one of the best things about vanilla updates in my opinion, is that they take old features and give them more use and help them to kind of age in a more graceful way. And so today I figured we'd ask the question of which older features have aged the best across Minecraft's history. I've narrowed this down to 12 features I'll be sharing with you today, but I'd like to hear your opinion on which of these has aged the true best out of all of them, and obviously the one at the very end is going to be my personal favorite, so stick around to see if you agree with me. But first things first, let's talk about the fact that all of these features are 5 years or older, and the Woodland Mansion is right on the cusp of that, since it was added in 1.11, the exploration update, and it was the most hyped feature before it came out. It was going to be Minecraft's biggest ever structure, but when it did release into the game, it ended up being so rare they had to add a map for you to find it, and most people didn't think it was worth going through the effort of trading for that map, and so ultimately it became a feature that most people didn't find, and the few people that were interested in going through all of the effort to locate one of these were just going there for the loot, where you could get golden apples, diamond hoes, and most importantly of all, the totem of undying from the evoker. I think the Woodland Mansion was a really fun idea for a feature, but I think for most people the best thing that it brought to the game is it allowed them to build the structure in the jigsaw blocks, which make building bigger structures, which are kind of procedurally generated, a lot easier. This is how it was possible to make the piglin bastions, look at the size of those things, or the ancient cities. And so ultimately the Woodland Mansion mostly was a thing that brought in really cool tech for new structures, but they've also started to age a little bit better after the village and pillage update made it easier to trade for a map to these places, since you were doing a lot more villager trading anyway, and then especially after 1.19 brought the alley to being exclusively found here or the pillager outposts. Sure, most people are going to grab the couple you can get at a pillager outpost, but isn't it beautiful when you go into one of these places and you find 30 alleys trapped away? That is a real lore and gameplay feeling reason to come to these places, and I love the aging of the Woodland Mansion so far, but I don't think it's the best aged feature, because I just think there's still some way to go. If they refresh new rooms and give it more purposes in upcoming updates, I think this could be a really great structure. However, I think that a feature that has aged much better would have to be Firework rockets. These were added in 1.4.6, that was all the way back in 2012, and honestly, it was a pure aesthetic feature at the time. The sales pitch was it was purely a way to celebrate, and I think it's funny that standards have improved so much. If they added a feature that just made explosions in the sky, it would be seen as kind of silly to date, but at the time it made perfect sense. But here's the great thing, when the Elytra was added in 1.9 with only a way to glide, a lot of people saw this and they tried to make ways to make gliding infinite. You could shoot yourself with punch bows, etc. However, just 2 updates later, with 1.11.1, they decided to make it so you could actually boost yourself using these fireworks, and now this has become the de facto, the go-to use for these fireworks. Sure, you can still celebrate, and there's a whole firework rocket mechanic around that, but most players just know the recipe of gunpowder and paper equals the ability to fly as far and as fast as you want. This repurposing of an older feature to give it much more use in the modern context is the sort of thing that really makes me appreciate and value vanilla updates, because a lot of mods just go really far out there and they add entirely new sets of things to the game, but making the existing set of features more cohesive is something I really like, because they did the same thing with wool. If you go all the way back to the classic edition of Java, so 0.0.2a, we're talking 2009, wool was added to the game solely as a colored block. You could find it, and it was the way to make colorful things in Minecraft. You could make a Mario if you wanted to, and when people play creative, they just used it as the block of color because it was the most colorful selection, being able to be dyed in each of those colors. Over time though, what they decided to do is add more recipes to the game that would use wool. Obviously, the bed is the key example, and it has a special place in my heart because it was the first feature added to the game after I started playing. I just had many all-nighters where I had to go underground because it was dark. The bed is a way to sleep through the night, and it's crafted using, you guessed it, free wool. Later they made it so you could make colored beds, but even just the bed by itself, revolutionary. Paintings are another way that you can use the wool added after that. Then of course there's the carpets, which were added in the same update as the fireworks, funnily enough. This was another use for the wool, and then there is the banners added as recently as 1.8, and just all of these features together, all the way from the just colored walls, all the way up to the banner, makes you really feel like this is an integral part of the game, and this is something that I think modern day concrete is lacking. You make concrete and concrete powder solely as a way to make colorful things in Minecraft, and it doesn't go any bit further yet, and I'd love to see that change there. But as far as wool goes, I love that they made not only new ways to get it with dyeing sheep, etc., but they made so many new recipes with it that wool feels like a very useful block that just happens to be very colorful and very soft. Maybe that's just my opinion, but you know what else is my opinion? I think that soul sand has aged just as well. So soul sand was from 2010, which makes it relatively modern by the standards of wool. However, soul sand is another block which is really cool because all it was really used for when it first came out was a rudimentary way of making mob traps. Because it's technically only 15/16 of a block tool, there's all sorts of weird mechanics that go down with this, and it was just used as the slowing block. And sure, that was great enough for a while until 1.0.0 added the Neverwort, which could only be grown on it, and now it was a farming block as well as a weird mob trap block. Obviously, it also existed in the environment, but you get the point. Then what they decided to do with 1.13 is make it so you could use the block as a way to make bubble columns. I still don't fully understand the logic of like water coming out of here, but we don't need to. We can just accept that the souls are what make the water apparently. And then finally in 1.16 they made it so not only was there a whole biome of the game dedicated to this, but also there was the soul speed enchantment which was added, so now soul sand was usable as a way to make super fast pathways. I think maybe it was a mistake making soul speed be damaged so much by using soul sand. However, the idea of having a dedicated fast block and then making that dedicated fast block the otherwise dedicated slow block is just such a fun idea, and that's a really great repurposing of an old feature in my opinion. Just like Shulkers, right? Shulkers were added in 1.9, the combat update, and although that's the most controversial update in Minecraft history, we always forget that the combat update also added the End Islands. The End became not just a place to fight the dragon, but a whole dimension in its own right, and the terrifying mob that you could find out in these End cities were the Shulkers. They were so scary, they'd launch you into the sky, and they'd kill you with your own full damage. It really is like a horror story. But then when Minecraft 1.11 came out, they decided to add a drop to them for the first time, the Shulker Shell. That's right, for the first 2 updates, they had absolutely nothing in them besides being a guard for the End City and its loot by itself, but people didn't just want the diamond loot or beetroot seeds you could find out there. They wanted to find Shulker Shells because Shulker Shells could be used to craft Shulker boxes, which was Minecraft's answer to the backpack that everyone had been requesting. Every single Shulker box can contain a full inventory, minus your hotbar, worth of ingredients, meaning if you kill enough Shulkers, you can get literally thousands of stacks of items all being stored in your inventory at the same time. Honestly, 1.11 was just the update where they took old features and made them more worthwhile, even though the update is seen as one of the more forgotten updates because it was right before the big era of making really big stuff. I think that this is one of those updates that is really valued by hardcore players, as in players who play a lot, not players who play with the hardcore hearts and then when they die load a backup or go into open to LAN and change their game mode and pretend that they didn't. But when we're saying hardcore players, I mean that people who play a lot of Minecraft really appreciate the Firework rocket as a way to fly around their world, and they really appreciate the ability to fly around with hundreds of stacks of items thanks to the Shulker box. Personally, as someone who works on big projects where I need hundreds of stacks, it is game changing, and I really do love both of those features for that reason. In fact, a similar feature around a similar time was the hoe, because the hoe was added in Java Edition in Dev 2010-0206. It was in 2010 basically, and the hoe was only used for tilling land for years. Seriously, the hoe is gotta have the biggest redemption story in Minecraft history. It was one of those items that was literally joked about, don't waste your diamonds on a hoe, because there was no way you could till soil faster. It was just it would last slightly longer, but who's wasting diamonds just to have a longer lasting iron hoe? Only very rich people who don't mind that the hoe is using them for their diamonds, if you ask me. But basically, yeah, it was only used for tilling soil until 1.16, which is when they started to realize, what if we took this last mystery tool and we started to give it more uses? And again, I really love this because they made it the go-to tool for a lot of new blocks in that update, like the shroom lights, but also a lot of older blocks that didn't have a specific block to use and you had to previously use your fist. If you want to mine hay bales or leaves or anything on this list, you'll find it easier to do so with a hoe, and in a lot of cases substantially easier. Now we can justify not only wasting diamonds on a hoe, but a lot of people, myself included, will waste netherite on a hoe. That sounds ludicrous, but let me tell you, it's totally true. Just like Salmon. Salmon was added in Java Edition 1.7.2, and it really was the update that changed the world, because fishing is everything in the world, if you ask me, and after this update, instead of just receiving fish every time, you'd get sometimes cod, sometimes salmon, sometimes pufferfish, sometimes clownfish, and a whole other drop table of very interesting things. But this was just the start, because when 1.13 came out, do you know what happened? They added salmon inside of the water. And Bedrock Edition took this a step further by not just adding salmon to the water, but sometimes you could find smaller than average fish too. This actually led to the oceans feeling alive, because it wasn't just one size of fish, there was two sizes of fishes, but then they topped themselves again, because you know what they also added at the exact same time? That's right, you could find larger salmon than normal. These salmon are so large that they drop bones alongside their salmon. That's right, they're not big salmon, they're big boned salmon. And honestly, this feature has been the defining go-to as to why you'd play Bedrock. I mean, sure, Java Edition has the new combat, and you can dual wield any item you like, and there's more than 2 world customization options, and there's hardcore, and there's
approximately 10 hours later.
But their salmon doesn't come in 3 different sizes, so the fools over there don't realize they're playing the worst version of Minecraft that doesn't have big salmon yet. This is why I'm spreading the word right now. Play Bedrock Minecraft, because you need to experience our Lord and Savior, the big salmon, and if you don't realize that yet, then maybe you never will. Speaking of things you might not have realized, villagers were first added in Java 1.0. They were called testificates, and they were the most useless mob I think Minecraft has ever added. At least when the other useless ambient mobs like polar bears or parrots are added to the game, they try to give them some small reason to exist, and you know, that's worked to differing degrees over time, but at least they've got an ambient existence where you could say, oh, that's cute, that makes the iceberg biome or the jungle feel more alive. The testificate didn't make anything feel more alive. It just made everyone feel confused until 2012, when 1.3.1 came out and trading was officially added. I wouldn't say this is an example of a feature necessarily aging well, because it feels as though the trading was always planned. It just took them quite a few updates. It's kind of like copper right now. You can technically use it for stuff. I mean, there is a lightning rod. Have you guys seen that? There's the zoom feature in Optifine, but it costs copper and amethyst too. There are uses for copper right now, but we're clearly waiting on that killer reason, the reason why you want to see all of this ore around your world, and the same thing was true before 1.3. However, the great thing about villagers to me is the fact that in 1.14 they decided to just rehaul the entire system to make it a lot better and friendlier to players and more fun to play around with. Nowadays they're used in a number of different ways. You can use them for their ambient value to make a city feel more alive. You can use them just to farm a particular tool, whether that's enchanted diamond pickaxes, whether that's maps for your woodland mansion or anything else. They're very useful for farming for that reason, but also they can be used for iron farms. That's right, iron farms involve villagers, and you know, the reason that happened is a whole fun mistake on its own, but also they will actually farm ingredients, meaning you can technically make fully automatic farms to some extent using their farming ability. This is an amazing improvement that actually makes them feel like real life humans that you're kind of programming by locking them in boxes. And honestly, I always think about this when Minecraft says they're trying to encourage players to learn more about what helps the environment and stuff like that, when they've also got this big message in their game of like, there are human beings and you can use them exclusively to your own purposes. Do you want to use them just to make things feel more alive? You can keep them around. Do you want to use them to farm for you until they die? You can do that. Do you want to use their existence solely so they'll summon in protectors and you can kill their protectors and get valuable resources? That's a-okay on the morality spectrum, but don't you dare feed cookies to parrots, you monster. And I joke, but I think I honestly share this view of morality. I mean, if I see someone killing a person, it's like, well, you know, maybe they had a good reason. If you see someone kicking a dog, it's like, okay, let's go kill this person. Or like, if you ever go to an animal shelter, it's the saddest thing. All those cats and dogs just looking for someone, you know, to look after them. On the other hand, though, I hear about all this infant formula shortage that's been happening across the world because of supply chains, and I can't help but think to myself, like, well, it's kind of solving an issue right there, isn't it? Anyway, so with that said, speaking of things that are solving issues, boats. These were added in a Secret Friday update back in Alpha V1.0.6, or for those of you not familiar with your Minecraft update schemes, that was 2010, and when they were first added, they were such a nightmare. They were a lot like children. It would break at the slightest pressure, and it would complain at you and act like it was your fault, and I always secretly despised them for being as fragile as my emotional state, which is why I would only use them for the longest of ocean journeys, and even then I'd be mad because they could still break on nothing. thing, but nowadays they have strengthened the hull of the boats, and they've also given them these lovely little oars, which for some reason come out of nowhere on Java and have to be crafted on Bedrock. Another weird difference we could talk about, by the way, but now they are useful not only for, going on long journeys or short journeys, but they're also useful for journeys where you want to bring a mob across the world or into the end. I have villagers in my end city now, which, by the way, another fun use for them, because all you have to do is carry them across the end. And by the way, you can also use these boats on ice to make boataways. That's right, we call them motorways in the UK, for that, in case that joke is lost on you. And so a motorway would be called a boataway. Except a real boataway is when you use packed ice. Except the real boataway is when you use blue ice, a new block from 1.14, and they are so much better, and they're getting even better soon because you can add a chest to one, which means if you don't want to mob but instead want to bring items around at high speeds, boats are going to be the way to do it, which is ridiculous, but I'm glad to see them improving it so much. Honestly, so when I say I'm glad to see them improving it so much, I think this can apply to nothing as well as it can apply to Minecraft Bedrock Edition. So technically Bedrock Edition has existed since 2011 on a technical level because it's just a continuation of the Pocket Edition. The real Bedrock Edition launch is considered to be 2017 when the Better Together update came out, and they launched it on so many new platforms, mostly consoles, and allowed you to crossplay across phones, PCs, like tablets, and all of those consoles as if you were playing on the same device. This is a big deal for Minecraft, having the same game with the same updates released across so many platforms, and if we're being honest, it was such a big deal that even Microsoft themselves couldn't handle it because every single one of those editions had some form of bugs. Besides the Pocket Edition and the Windows 10 edition, which had existed for years before that point, every console edition ran into so many issues, and a lot of players were genuinely, hating the fact that they discontinued the old editions for something that didn't even correctly work. This is something they fixed to differing degrees depending on which platform you're playing, but now it is not just the weird console but also phone version of Minecraft. It is now an edition of the game that rivals Java. The Java and Bedrock editions are considered co-equal. They both get the same features at the same time, and Minecraft Bedrock Edition might seem like the weird version if you've been playing Minecraft since before 2011 or you don't play on a console or phone or whatever, but here's the weird thing about it. Bedrock Edition sells a lot better than Java Edition. The thing driving the growth of the game and leading it to be the best-selling game ever is actually Bedrock Edition, and that sounds a little bit like it's an opinion, and an opinion coming from a very biased source since I do play Big Salmon Edition, but if you separate out Java and Bedrock to being separate games, you'll find that Minecraft Bedrock Edition is still the best-selling game of all time, even if you ignore every single Java sale, whereas if you take out the Java edition of the game and separate it from the Bedrock Edition, it is only the 18th best-selling game of all time, which is still very respectable that just one edition of Minecraft is 18th, but the fact that the Bedrock Edition has sold more copies than any other game out there, including the original game on which it is based, just shows you the incredible power of Minecraft Bedrock, and honestly it shows you that although it was probably rushed, the things they've done in the 5 years since the Better Together update have really led to so many improvements, and it's led to an actual community of Bedrock players. Speaking of Bedrock players though, I have a feature I want to talk about that's almost as old as Bedrock because it's one from 0.0.19a. This is of course the sponge, and it was added as a way to stop the flow of liquids before finite liquids were implemented. It's a little surreal looking at old footage of Minecraft and seeing how water worked, where it just would expand infinitely upon its same layer. You could fill an entire cave with just a single source of water, and although that has lots of benefits by itself, it was also very worrying, so they needed the sponge as a way to stop this. When water became a finite resource that, you can make infinite by using some weird techniques, but wasn't infinite by itself, obviously the sponge became useless, and it sat in the game as a creative-only block that could be used for texture reasons, but not even very good textures, for years and years and years. However, later in 1.8, the Bountiful update, they decided to use the sponge as a reward for going to the brand new ocean monuments. This was not only cool because it was a reward for killing the underwater mobs that you would get this block that made water go away, but also you could drain one of these things entirely, and this is one of people's favorite projects they've done ever since then. I love it a lot, but it's not the feature that has aged best overall, even though it's aged so well, because the feature that in my opinion has aged the best across Minecraft's entire past is Enchanting. I think Enchanting is one of the best systems in Minecraft, but it didn't start that way. It came in version 1.0.0, the full release of the game in 2011, and it was one of those features that was useful when it came out, but has been made more and more useful with basically every update since then. Seriously, almost every update since 1.0 has done something to Enchanting, and in case you're curious about the first change, it was lowering the enchantment cap from level 50 to to level 30, making it so more players could enchant. You didn't need to have a farm, or you didn't need to go crazy on it. You could just do a bit of mining, or a bit of smelting, or a bit of farming. Anything would allow you to get to this level 30 cap a lot easier. And then later they made it so instead of requiring 29 or 30 levels and taking them all away from you, instead it would require just 1 to 3 levels and a single piece of lapis. Then they made it so you could enchant books and use an anvil to apply those enchantments to your stuff, or you could apply different enchantments from different things together. Then they decided to make it so you could, with the grindstone, take those enchantments away. Then they added a whole bunch of new enchantments. Then they made some enchantments exclusive to outside the enchantment table. Then they made some you could get via fishing. Then they made some you could get via natural chests, some via trading. And honestly, all of these collections of enchantment systems, which all come down to these 3 blocks, the enchantment table, the anvil, and the grindstone, it's such a genius system that really encourages people to improve their stuff. I think that although Enchanting could do with a big overhaul, brand new enchantments would be really fun. I mean, where is magic protection, for example, Mojang? There is all sorts of weird examples of things they could add. Overall, I think this is the best aged feature because every single update we come back to it and we make it slightly better and slightly better fitting for the Minecraft world. There is a leggings enchantment for the first time in 1.19, and I love that whatever 1.20 brings, we know that it's likely going to have some improvement to the enchanting system or just a brand new enchantment and way to obtain it. Anyway, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful to go through the features that aged best. Let me know if you agree with me that enchantments are the best aged feature, or if you think it's another thing from this list, or it's something else altogether. Either way though, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video and you want to get yourself an IBX Toy Cat t-shirt that says it's literally just an IBX Toy Cat t-shirt, the best form of merch, we're going to get one of these mugs that reminds people that we'll all die someday, which, let's be honest, we all want to be reminded of that, right? It looks like it says bum day, right? Anyway, if you want to get a mug that reminds you of your impending doom, it comes as a 2-set, by the way. Isn't that cute? Look at that love. You're going to die someday together with someone. Let's be honest, you're not, but you might. And you know what else you might do? You might consider subscribing, perhaps have those notifications turned on, so you'll see more of these videos daily on your homepage. Thank you very much for watching. The ceiling looks like it's not very far above my head, but don't worry, it is. I can walk quite far back before it hits me. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Unless I die in a tragic car accident or something. Goodbye.